Range Rover is proud to partner Monocle on Design on Monocle Radio. Every Range Rover is created to elevate leaders' lives with cutting-edge design, connected, refined interiors, and electrified performance. These qualities drive every Range Rover to deliver unrivaled luxury. This vision is inspired by the same values that created this icon 55 years ago. To hear how Range Rover is elevating leaders' lives, tune in to a special season of On Design Extra, in which the Monocle team meet the innovators, trailblazers and design leaders who are inspiring the Range Rover journey. Listen out for those special programs soon on monocle.com or wherever you get your podcasts. Monocle on Design and Range Rover, elevating leaders' lives.
The world today needs good design and architecture more than ever. Although noticing it isn't always easy. We move fast, we scroll, we forget to look around. But the spaces we live in shape how we feel, think and work. So how can we recognise good design when it's working? What are the extra layers in a room that can change how we live and breathe in it? And what can Swiss designers teach us about slow living, beyond just cowbells? This is Monocle on Design.
When it comes to the design, Swiss people think things through. There's an intentionality behind everything.
You need to keep people excited about something they see every day. You build a relationship with your object.
This is Monocle on Design, a show where we discuss everything from architecture and craft to furniture and graphic design. I'm Nick Manise. On today's program, an extended conversation with leading light Michael Anastassiades about why good design is in the extra layers. A deep dive on Swiss craft with furniture maker Seitz for their Monocle residency in Zurich, and some reflections from Monocle's Grace Charlton on the PAD Design Fair in London. All that coming up on Monocle on Design. Hello and welcome to today's episode of Monocle on Design. Grace Charlton's sitting across from me.
Hi.
Hi. I feel like we've
been speaking for like an hour straight, but
exactly.
Hi.
And you know, that is off the back of the PAD Design Fair in London, which we've just been to. Maybe we did stop for a little spot of lunch afterwards. I guess I want to get your initial reactions, but maybe I should set this up because you'd never been to PAD before this.
No, I hadn't. And it was quite interesting. It's sort of design that isn't necessarily functional. It's pushed to an extreme. It's quite heavenly.
It's like if a amazing art gallery had a baby with a really chic elder woman's living room. I think that's kind of the aesthetic of it.
There's a slight villainous edge as well because it implies a lot of money. And like how people get their money, I don't want to know necessarily. But they can spend 18k on a table that looks like it was sort of birthed by David Lynch.
So PAD is a collectible design fair that takes place in both London and Paris. The London edition has just taken place in mid-October, but it's essentially an invitational event for galleries across the globe to kind of come in and present their work. It has French origins. So there are a lot of French galleries. We saw a lot of Genevas, splashed along the front of these kind of booths within this
marquee.
Marquee is what I'm looking for.
I'm going to call it a marquee.
Marquee in London. What I do love is you can see the French influence because there was a dedicated smoking area, like sheltered smoking area within the marquee, where there were all these people ready to drop hundreds of thousands of pounds or euros or dollars, just sort of lighting up to calm their nerves before making a big decision.
I know. I think what I found really surprising is that people are actually there shopping for their homes in Gestalt or something like that. Like we spoke to a few people who were working the booths and they were like, oh, it was such a good morning. Like we've sold already so much.
Incredibly productive. We kind of touched on it. This is something that's become more prominent for me kind of in recent years, or at least certainly on my radar in recent years, this rise of collectible design and the idea that a really amazing table that's maybe an edition of 5 can hold its value. So it's a worthwhile investment. I guess these pieces tend to have a different language. I mean, what did you kind of pick up in terms of a visual aesthetic?
It's a little bit more fantastical. There were a lot of pieces by Lalanne, who was a French artist who's best known for his like little sheep. Maybe you know them. I've noticed his bird sculptures and chairs and tables are really blowing up. And I also noticed a lot of Calder, the Spanish painter. So
I think that's kind of what's fascinating. These booths aren't just, I guess, presenting design. Like it's not just about the tables and the chairs, but it's about creating a whole atmosphere. Yeah, where you've got Calder's sitting alongside Gio Ponti. We saw an amazing Gio Ponti gaming table, and maybe this is the other thing that's quite amazing about this. It feels like so many of the pieces on show were kind of very unique or very distinct, almost could be a source of inspiration or a jumping off point for other designers that walk through the space. I mean, if you could reissue any of the pieces you saw, is there anything that jumps out at you?
Oof, I really liked the Brazilian mid-century modernism we saw. I'd probably get one of those chairs. The Lino Bobardi, stunning.
I mean, that was it as well. And I think these kind of events also speak to the quality coming out of particular countries. There were 2 or 3 booths that were exclusively dedicated to Brazilian mid-century modernism. And maybe, I guess I'm also curious. I feel like when I'm kind of assessing these pieces, I feel it in my brain that I'm not allowed to like mid-century modern anymore.
Yeah,
I don't know if you have that reaction.
Yeah. I saw like an Alva Alto and I was like, oh, okay, I've seen this before.
It is funny because these were pieces that I was drawn to for such a long period of time, but I think you just sort of start to see the proliferation of them. And maybe there's something to be said about like our brains almost get tired of seeing the same things over and over and over again, which is why maybe in fashion there are kind of like all these little micro trends that come in and out because we're constantly looking for newness. And I think that's maybe a little bit harder in design when you have to live with these things for a long period of time.
I find mid-century, to me, I started associating it with millennials for a long time, actually. Like it sort of seemed to be the predominant aesthetic of the 2010s. And now I'm just ready for something else. Which
direction is Gen Z going in? What sort of pieces are they being pulled in by?
I think it's a little bit more 1930s, brushed aluminium, darker woods, maybe a bit of burl wood. I want to say it's sexier than the millennials, sorry. Okay, Not to make this a battle of the bands.
It is worth noting that you are right on the cusp. So there's a little bit of mid-century and a little bit of the 1930s coming out from you're kind of sitting right there at that intersection.
Yeah.
We're talking about design that's covetable. We've kind of touched on the mid-century and those iconic designers, but I guess the question is, who are those people today?
What a beautiful segue.
It's such a natural segue as well.
We've got the Cypriot-born London-based designer Michael Anastassiades. You interviewed him, Nick. What was it like to meet a living legend?
We actually managed to have him join us in the studio after he just won the London Design Medal during London Design Festival. And he was the most humble, kind man that you could imagine. And I think that actually also speaks volumes about his work.
It's a calming sort of presence that he imbues in the spaces that he creates and the lighting that he, crafts. He was just a really lovely guy. I think he lived up to whatever my expectation of him could be because he's just a super gentle presence, much like his design.
I think so. And it's funny that you flagged that. My favourite tidbits about him, and we talked a little bit about it in the chat, is the fact that he's a trained yoga teacher.
I was thinking about this because yoga is a practice, right? It's not something you do to get a workout or whatever. It's a mentality. It's a philosophy. And he then puts that in his design practice. So I was really happy to find this out.
I think the other thing, and maybe this feeds into yoga, which I guess is all about intentionality. And I just want to be clear, not a yoga podcast. You kind of see that coming across in his work. It talks a little bit about only designing when he has something meaningful to say. And I think that's an incredibly wonderful way to practice. So you finished the industrial engineering, you graduated from the RCA, from Imperial. Can you get a job with a design firm?
Absolutely not. I mean, I tried to. I did try quite a lot, and I did manage to get some freelance work. I mean, through some colleagues that were more directed in that more straightforward sort of employment in different practices at the time. And since they were already working there, they invited me to do some freelance for them. And that's what I did. But I knew right from the beginning that I had to continue developing my ideas and sort of moved towards the message cup. I mean, I thought, okay, I've got to explore this in its full potential and see where it brings me. So I was for years developing all this conceptual work.
And this is under your own studio? This is you set up your own studio, or?
In my own studio, yes. And, getting the odd freelance work to support myself. And at the same time, making a living through another passion that I, at that time, was, practicing yoga. So I thought maybe I should teach it, and somebody encouraged me to teach it. So I all of a sudden found myself a few years after college teaching yoga and earning a living from yoga. And at the end of the day, that's the money that supported my practice, my conceptual practice.
That's incredible. So it gave you the room to set up your own conceptual practice. I mean, why was doing that important? Why not continue to try and pick up work as a more, and I'm using air quotes here, but standard industrial designer or industrial engineer?
Because I thought I had something different to say. And as a model, it didn't seem to exist around me. So, you usually have a model somewhere of somebody or a practice or an individual designer that has done something amazing that you can relate to. And it seemed that at that time there was nothing like that going on. I mean, it had existed in history, and if you look at interesting design in the 60s, all these radical designers, and especially in Italy, were doing amazing things. But the design ideas to that extreme level and that interesting level seemed that it was no longer around. And I wanted to search what was relevant for the time that we were living in.
And can I ask, what you said you had something different to say. What was it that was different that you were trying to say?
I was fascinated with electronic products and how electronic products were affecting our psychology, and our being. I was interested in this deeper psychological relationship that you build with your object. And so wanted to explore that further. And it was good. I mean, I was doing my own work and keep on developing furniture, some lights, but they were electronic. They were interactive pieces. My first light was actually the antisocial light, which is a light that glows when it's absolute silence. So the idea behind it is a living room lamp, which is in the center of the room. And when you start talking around it, then the light starts to dim down. So you have to be completely silent in order to have its glow. Otherwise, it will dip down and eventually it will switch off.
I mean, it sounds like a phenomenal light for reading in silence and reading in peace and quiet.
It was an important kind of piece for me. And so it was objects like this that I kept on developing.
I want to ask, jumping from, you're talking there about, I guess, working with technology, where does light start to come in? You mentioned the antisocial light. There's a link between tech and how that functions. But, you look at your practice now and your studio now, and it's, if I may say, defined by light. When did that start becoming key? And how are you continuing to build on that conceptually?
Well, I always had a passion for objects, for everyday objects that, I had around me, and the aesthetics of them really interested me hugely. And I felt there was part of me that was not actually complete. And I started questioning my role as a designer. What does a designer do? Because obviously all these objects, I would have loved for them to be in production, to be available for sale, but they were far too advanced and extreme, so they only had to exist as ideas. And so I wanted to explore industry. And at that moment, when I decided to do it, the door was shut. Industry wouldn't open the door to me. Nobody wanted to work with a designer that was not famous or not established in that way. And the work that I had done before was not really work that would open that door for me.
Even if some of it's now in the V&A?
Well, even if some of it is at the V&A. And at that moment I thought, okay, probably the best way to demonstrate that side is to do it myself. So I said, okay, I will design, produce, and try and sell my own designs. And I chose lighting, just purely because I found it quite poetic, and I had an interesting response, maybe through the antisocial light. And then there was the social light, which did completely the opposite.
That's a great name.
That had to be talked to keep the glow. So it's a therapy object. But irrespective of that, I mean, I started designing objects, and it coincided also with my decision to buy a place in London and make London my permanent home and say, I'm staying here. It was a very symbolic kind of time. And I bought this really old building in Waterloo, South London, and decided to slowly start renovating it. I mean, I started by gutting the whole building and pretty much building it from scratch. And it's been a project that I would say it's never been finished.
You're still making for yourself, but I know, I see your name kind of everywhere. In the best way, you're now being approached by these brands that maybe didn't want to work with you at the start of your career or wouldn't have worked with you at the start of your career. Do you think the way people perceive your work has changed, or is there a growing appreciation for, I guess, conceptual design?
100%. And it didn't take long for these people to get convinced. I mean, I started my brand in 2007, and 4 years later, in 2011, I decided to take part in the biggest lighting fair in the world, which is in Milan, Euroluce. And I took the smallest booth I could possibly afford. And it was even hard convincing them to give me a space in that fair. But I did manage, and that's where I met Flaws. And Flaws opened lots of other doors. You know, I mean, it was interesting. The first furniture brand that came to me was Herman Miller right after that, and said, you know, I know you do beautiful lighting, but can you do furniture? And I said, I've always done furniture, but I never had an opportunity to explore my relationship with industry in furniture. And they gave me that opportunity, and one thing led to another. Then more companies joined, and now I find myself, you know, doing all these different projects.
Maybe going a little bit off piste here, but does your yoga practice ever influence your work? Do you pull things from there in terms of, when I think yoga, I think energy, I think flow, I think all of these kind of ethereal qualities. Does that come into your work?
I don't think there's anything that you do in life that doesn't really affect the next thing you try. And definitely yoga was and is still a big part of my life, and it taught me a lot of things. It also taught me to have an outside perspective for everything that I do. You know, whenever I feel that I'm far too much into design, it's important because I always feel that I have another profession almost to step back to and be critical of what it is that I'm doing for myself. So I step in and out of that.
If you look at your work, it feels, I don't know, I'm just guessing here, Michael, I could be completely off and you might see things differently, but to me it almost feels like you look at the emotions of something first. Yes, there's a functionality to your work, obviously that has to be there, but it is almost like, there's an art to what you're doing that's not just necessarily problem solving in terms of we need light in a room, but it's like, how do we want to feel underneath that light? I'm projecting completely, but is that part of your considerations?
Well, it's all about layering. I mean, you have to introduce all these layers in your work. Otherwise, your work will remain very superficial. If you're addressing only one small or one layer, there's no chance the project will survive. There's no chance that there is longevity. There's no chance that there is relevance. I mean, you need to keep people excited about something they see every day. And in my view, that excitement should grow. For something to be part of your house, and every day you encounter it, every day you use it, you know, beyond its functionality, whether it gives you good quality light, but it has to trigger something, and it has to trigger your imagination.
Can I ask, what's an example of a layer, I guess, for people beyond design? What do you mean by that? Is it a patina developing over time?
It's not only that. I mean, it's everything. It's the materiality of it. How do you choose the material? How do you choose the finish? You know, I'm able to express that a lot with my own brand of lighting. And, you know, we never put any protective layers on anything that we produce. The brass is unfinished, so it develops naturally its own patina. You can polish it if you decide to. So, it keeps you excited. It builds you build a relationship with your object. You know, it allows that possibility to exist. I mean, we've had customers that have simply returned a lamp to us just purely because it had a small fingerprint mark on it. And, you know, we always have a paragraph that describes the nature of leaving something uncoated, in which case it will develop patina. But probably that fingerprint was from the people that packaged it accidentally, that, you know, maybe customs that open things. Somebody touched it with bare hands, and then it was returned to us. And they said, give me something different. It has a default. And I said, no, this is how it is. And at that moment, you realize that, okay, not everybody is your customers. But if people don't really acknowledge this layer that gives richness to your object, then it's not a photograph. They're not a customer. It's not a picture.
Well, what
it's
I love
a real product.
The fingerprint feels itself is a physical layer. That's that initial layer, that initial
and
embrace.
It already has something, a personalization on something. Nothing is the same. And it doesn't have to be the same. You cannot control everything. And I think this is what makes an object alive. I mean, it's interesting. Even if you look at historically, take an example, you look at vintage pieces. Why do vintage pieces have such an amazing sort of demand and beauty? Because they've had all this life that is clearly visible in the way that they are. So, and the problem is a lot of the companies now start putting all these kind of protective, layers of lacquers. And then you see everything that can ages, and what can't age because of the protective lacquers remains completely pristine. So you might see the leather upholstery developing all these kind of beautiful cracks and beautiful folds and patinas and everything. And then all of a sudden, the rest of it looks plastic.
My thanks to Michael Anastassiades, who joined me in the studio there. I want to quickly throw this to you, Grace. He talked about designing for the gallery versus designing for the industry. Where do you fall? Are you a gallery girl or are you an industry insider?
Ooh, I feel very torn between the two. I think I might be a gallery girl, but I do appreciate the sort of democratizing of design. I think what I don't like actually is when things are mass, but then they're like overpriced at the same time.
Yeah, I think there's something really valid in that. I think there is an appeal for me in industry in that I like the idea that this has been replicated en masse for as many people to enjoy and use as possible. And maybe for me the catch is, and it always comes down to this, is like quality. If it's like badly made and falls apart, I don't want to. But you get those, and I am a millennial, but those like mid-century, you have some amazing cartel mid-century cabinets that are still holding up and standing up. I have one in my home.
Speaking of objects for the industry that still retain that feel of craft, you went to Zurich and did a stand-up set, basically, from what I've heard.
More or less. I mean, this was no adults in the room. Nick Manise led off the lead. There was a little bit of crowd work. We were bringing in people. I was fortunate to have join us for this talk and event, which took place during Zurich Design Week in Zurich. But the reason I thought this was a good thing for us to talk a little bit about is they're Swiss American, you're Swiss Australian, and now been in Britain for a little while. Yeah. You really ham up this Scandinavian heritage that you have. What, you maybe spent a month of your total life in Scandinavia? 60%
Scandi, baby.
Okay.
I did the DNA test.
Okay.
It's funny because I feel like growing up there, design and craft wasn't a big conversation. It was just sort of in the background. And then to come and work at Monocle, suddenly Switzerland's the best country in the world, and it made me like appreciate anew. And talking to Swiss designers is always really interesting as well.
What kind of jumps out at you? Because I guess in this chat, we talk about the fact that Swissness as a mindset, it's not like cowbells and mountains and raclette.
Yeah.
Is it?
No, I've been reflecting on this. I think Swissness is taking pride in choosing pain. There's like a sadistic element to being Swiss. It's like choosing the hard way at every turn and then like being really, really proud of how much hard work you've done on that. I
mean, I think you might have just done some copywriting for Seitz there, because
Really?
Well, their whole thing is like they talk a lot about slow design, and they don't mean it in the sense of things necessarily taking a long time, but it is really about doing things the right way, especially in furniture, the hard way. Like it's about finding that right manufacturer. In this case, they work with this amazing guy called Thomas, whose factory produces these pieces, but they do it in a considered, well thought out, incredibly well detailed way. It's also about, realizing that these pieces are going to be things that you're going to have in your home for a little while. So they don't want to carry the hallmarks of a fad or a trend, or be lumped in with mid-century or
Art Deco.
They don't want to be weighed down by this.
I think being Swiss is being incredibly uncompromising, which comes with pros and cons. But in this case, we're discussing the pros. Maybe.
100%. And it's about being intentional and timeless and rooted in craft.
Well, tell us why these guys, these Seitz guys, ended up in the Monocle Cafe.
Seitz guys in the zeitgeist. I kind of like this. So across 10 days, the Monocle Cafe became a showcase of craftsmanship and considered design. So it featured a custom Seitz installation, which what I really loved about this was the fact that it looked like it belonged. It was incredible how seamlessly their work kind of fit into our space at Dufourstrasse 90. So and I guess to mark this occasion and really say, hey, this isn't just our furniture, this is actually a collaboration. We had a talk, as we mentioned at the top. I was joined by Seitz co-founder Kevin Seitz and collaborators Thomas von Rickenbach, who makes the amazing Seitz furniture, and Rahel Morgan, who is a stylist that they work with regularly. And we talked a little bit more about this intentional approach to design and how design and furniture is a really important part of our day-to-day lives.
So she is the stylist, and we hired her because we think she's a perfect fit. She embodies Swissness, Swiss style, and we wanted, when we first approached her, we were looking to have a stylist that just understood what we were going for in terms of Swissness. I know that's so vague, but we didn't want it to be too obvious. I think sometimes when we think about Swiss design, we think about putting a cow on something, having a cow print, money, and she embodied and she understood what we were looking for, just in terms of the two spaces that we styled. And I mean, you did like an effortless job, so we're so happy.
Thank you.
Are you happy with that description? Is that a good sales pitch for your work?
Yeah, maybe it's important to know that I spend my time between Berlin and Basel. So speaking of Swissness, I mean, we will get back to that. But I think also the look from outside, like how do me as a half German look on Swiss designers, Swiss design, is maybe, a little side note of that conversation.
I like that. As an Australian, it's important to bring the outside perspective. Yeah. Thomas, who are you? Do you want Kevin to do the introduction for you as well?
It's up to you, Kevin.
I
like this. I like this. It's kind of like a weird dating show, like you're trying to auction them off or something.
I know, take your pick, man or woman. True. We have two options. So this is Thomas von Richtenbach, and he produces our furniture in Moor Total. And again, we wanted to partner with people that just understood what we wanted to do and our overall vision. And he specializes in solid wood construction, and so that's how we approached him. And when we first reached out to him, we were looking for someone that just had a wide array of expertise. So again, it was an easy fit, I think.
A very natural fit from what I've heard. Thomas, I want to come to you now. Tell us about that initial approach from Kevin. I mean, when you look at the Seitz website, it's talking about considered design. It's talking about manufacturing, slow living in a way. We're going to come to the word slow in a moment. But what was your initial response to the brief? Was this something that you were like, I can get on board with this?
Yes, I could, because as a Swiss guy, it's slow living, not something special for us. We are just living this life and speaking this.
The slow food movement in Switzerland is just the food movement. That's it.
No, but when Kevin contacted me, I get the request, and I thought first, can I take it serious? Because someone from United States asked me to produce their furniture. So then I checked the website and I found out some about his Swiss background. So then I contacted him and told him, that's possible to produce the furniture by us. And I recognized he and Rob as well, they have a really high sense of quality, and they want to have everything in solid wood and well produced. And that's what we can in Moortotal, middle of Switzerland.
I mean, that sounds sensational and very, very peaceful and calming. I feel like I could have used that as a summer holiday. I want to come back to you, Kevin. So it's slow living, or slow design is just Swiss living and Swiss design.
Yeah, I think so.
But what does the phrase mean to you? When you put that on your material, when you try to explain your brand to somebody, it's not necessarily about doing things at a snail's pace.
Right, correct. I mean, all of you guys know because you're here in Switzerland, but there's an intentionality behind everything. Swiss people think things through. They measure twice, cut once sort of mentality, and I think that's really important. I think when you contrast that with New York, it's so different. And if we're producing Swiss furniture, why would you not make it here? It's a no-brainer.
Let's elaborate a little bit more on intentionality there. What does that mean? How does that translate, I guess, to the actual furniture itself? Is it in the details that you're using? Is it in the materials that you're using? Is it in I guess, your supply chains, the way it ends up in our house? Where does it end? When does it start?
Right. So I think during COVID is a really good example of intentionality. Everyone was at home thinking about their space, what they put in their space. And I think that's originally where it started. We wanted to feel good about the things that we put in our home, and that's how we created our furniture. So we've been thinking about the materiality, making sure that we don't use any toxins that can be found on finishes, for instance. And then even when it comes to the design, we're often very here in Zurich, and with this piece, for instance, we were thinking about the architecture that we see around the city. With some of the other pieces, like the sideboard, it's a bit more obvious with like that obvious Swissness with the Appenzeller charms that we have placed on the outside.
But
so
no cowbells?
No cowbells, not yet.
Just not yet? Well,
Not yet.
This is a scoop. I guess this link between good furniture, good design, and good quality of life, that's kind of central to what we do at Monocle. We've just had our Quality of Life conference in Barcelona. So I've come off a week of discussions about, the links between politics and the way that we live, the links between business and doing good business and the way we live, the links between fashion and the way we live. But, furniture and the objects that we surround ourselves with, the things that we're in contact with all the time, are obviously incredibly, incredibly powerful. What does the link between furniture and a good life mean to you?
I think if you have good, high-quality furniture, sustainable furniture, so you're a person who have a lot of thoughts about these really important questions that we have at the moment in the world. It helps you to maybe to get some answer about that. And also, if I just speak for me personally, at home, of course, I have also very high-quality furniture. And I look many times on this furniture and I think, wow, it's just a very nice product, and it makes me also a kind of satisfying calm. It's difficult to explain.
It simultaneously kind of lifts your spirit and calms your spirit.
Yeah.
Rahel, you agree there, but anything to add?
Yeah, no, what I like about natural materials, just like as wood, it is that also when aging, the aging process that we call patina is so important because I think it brings us closer to nature.
Kevin?
Just thinking about furniture in general, it's often the first thing you see when you wake up and the last thing you see when you go to bed, apart from your phone. But it's something that you always interact with and you don't realize how much of impact it has. It affects your space, it can affect your health. All of these things we don't necessarily think about. We think about sexier things. What am I going to wear today? What am I going to eat? And I think that it's like this hidden thing that it's always around you. It's always going to be with you. And I think it's just such an important part of your life. And sometimes you don't think about it.
My thanks to Kevin Seitz, Thomas von Rickenbach and Rahel Morgan there. Now, Seitz, this is a great little tidbit to kind of wrap this all up. They're in the new Monocle Design Directory, which is the first ever, and it's just hitting newsstands now, it's the first ever dedicated design magazine made by Monocle. How did you end up getting roped into making this, Grace Charlton?
I guess you pulled me for a coffee and said, hey, we're doing this and you don't have a choice. But I want to know how you got roped into doing this first.
So this is like one of those funny ideas that comes, and this is maybe getting a little bit to the inside workings of Monocle, but basically we had a meeting towards the end of last year, end of 2024, and it was like, okay, what are some amazing new projects that we can work on for 2025? Andrew Tuck, our editor-in-chief, was like, Nick, how would you feel about making a standalone design magazine? And I was like, absolutely, that sounds like an amazing idea, which it does. It is months and months and months of research, and there's an amazing directory, and as I said, that Seitz feature, it's kind of like a Yellow Pages style sort of thing. I think 64 cities across the globe, who to commission, which architects to turn to, which design stores to go and visit. And that really is an accumulation of all these things that I guess we've seen over the course of a year and seeing how we can kind of find a place for them. I mean, what, to your mind, makes it a special publication? Why should people pick it up?
I just think it's like a beautiful piece of glossy magazine. Like it's collectible, it's really hefty, but still the images are big, there's breathing room. I think it's sort of in the know. And I'm proud of this thing the most out of all of the stuff we put out.
100%. I mean, I think so much of Monocle's work filters through a design lens. So it was amazing to kind of only include things that are in the design lens. Like it was design on top of design, kind of, you know, and presented in a way with big pictures, amazing kind of different visual language, longer form reads, all these sorts of things. These are all reasons to go and pick it up on newsstands. That's out there now. We'll be back next week with another episode of Monocle on Design. A huge thanks to Hassan Anderson and Elliot Greenfield for editing and producing this show. My thanks to Grace Charlton. I've been Nick Manise. Thanks for listening.